Ladies and gentlemen, this is Miss Price giving you a brief lecture on characterization. There are two types of characterization. There is direct and indirect characterization. They are different, so you need to know the differences. With direct characterization, the narrator tells you directly about the character, meaning that there is a sentence that you can point to in the writing to prove your point. If a narrator or an author is using direct characterization, they tell you directly about the character, meaning her eyes were blue like the ocean, or her hair was dark like the night. That means that she has dark hair and the narrator has told you directly about the character. The second type is indirect. Indirect means the reader must infer. The reader must infer about the character because the narrator hasn't told them anything about it directly. So indirect characterization, you need to infer based on appearance, actions, thoughts, and words. Appearance, actions, thoughts, and words. You can also base it on motivation and the reactions from other characters. So you need to look at what happens and then make an inference based on that because the author or the narrator hasn't told you directly. So how you're going to remember this is direct characterization is when the author or narrator tells you directly, and indirect is when you have to infer. You're going to remember that by the ins. Okay? All right. Now, there are 5 types of characters. 5 types, and they're opposites of one another. So, a flat character is one-sided. You only see one aspect of the character. So, just like this piece of paper is flat and you only see one side of it, a flat character only offers you one side of the character. You only need one side of a flat character in order to move on in the story. Typically, villains are flat characters. Typically, sidekicks are flat characters because you don't need to know their motivation. You don't need to know their feelings. You only need what they bring to the main character. So, flat characters are one-sided. You only see one aspect, just like you only see one side of this flat piece of paper. Now, the opposite of a flat character is a round character. A round character is many-sided. They're like a real person with many thoughts and feelings. So when you think of round, I want you to think of a beach ball, and this is why. Take a look at our beach ball that we have hanging up in class. Our beach ball has several different areas, just like people can have several different emotions at one time. So for instance, someone can be lazy, and they can also be tired. Someone can be brave and angry at the same time. Someone could be excited and happy at the same time. All of these things can exist in one character, just like all of those things exist in one person. So when you think of a round character, I want you to think of a beach ball because they're many-sided, like a real person with many thoughts and feelings. Now, since we've talked about flat and we've talked about round, we need to talk about static and dynamic. Here's how you're going to remember static. A static character stays the same. You're going to remember that with the S's. A static character stays the same. So a static character has no change. A static character has no growth. They're the same at the beginning of the story as they are at the end of the story. Now, the opposite of a static character is a dynamic character. You're going to remember this with the D's. A dynamic character is different at the end. Dynamic, different. Dynamic, different. A dynamic character is different at the end because they change and grow throughout the story. So we have flat, round, static, and dynamic. That's only 4 out of our 5. So what we need to do is turn the poster around and talk about our foil characters. Foil characters are 2 characters that are the exact opposite. And authors do this in order to show contrast. Just like Cinderella is beautiful and kind and good, her stepmother is ugly and evil and horrible. And both of those characters serve their purpose because they show contrast between one another. So foil characters are 2 characters that are the exact opposite. And the point of a foil character is to show contrast. Now, 2 more types of characters are protagonists and antagonists. Protagonists are typically the good guys. They're your main character, and they drive the plot. It's their story. The antagonist brings the conflict. Antagonist brings the conflict, and they're mostly the bad guy. So those are the words that you need to know for characterization. Remember, there's direct and indirect characterization. Direct characterization is when the narrator tells you directly. Indirect means you must infer. You've got flat characters like a piece of paper, round characters like a volleyball, static characters which stay the same, and dynamic characters which are different. And you have foil characters which are the exact opposites of one another. You also have protagonists, which are mostly the main characters and the good guys, and antagonists, which bring the conflict, and they're mostly the bad guys.